As a cybersecurity professional, one of the biggest and most common misconceptions and fallacies I have continually come across is that if a security software, even an open sourced one, happens to be getting some government funding, especially if it's from the United States government, there is an intentional backdoor and they are doing it just to spy on you. The reality is, this often comes from people that are not actually even working in cybersecurity, nor actually understand the core concepts and premises of how things work in this world. Before we dive into this, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to see more of my content, and follow me on all of my other social medias. We do live streaming, and I'm on all different kinds of platforms. But let's dive back into this. So I'm making this video because as a TikTok creator, I have come across several different people.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but Signal is not safe anymore. There's literally a Nelk interview where a guy talks about how the Secret Service has been tapping Signal to find people they are looking for.
Signal is an op. In honor of the other winter boots content going around on this app, I just wanted to add my perspective on this. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, I'm just a lowly software engineer, but I remember a number of years ago when people started talking about Signal, I looked into it and discovered that Signal
that are insinuating this fallacious argument that, well, Signal got some government funding because, they happen to have a nonprofit arm. I don't trust them, and they're probably backdoored, and have you heard about the NSA, trying to break encryption? And they don't seem to understand there's a huge difference between having an intentional backdoor in a piece of software and then also exploiting a unknown vulnerability. Those are two completely different things. And we are going to be talking about Signal as one example, but we're also going to be talking about another one that I happen to be wearing the t-shirt for, did not plan it when recording this video, the Onion Router, aka Tor. So the reality is Signal as we know it, yes, they are centralized. That's probably the only argument one could actually make against them, because there is also Matrix Messenger, which does allow for decentralized communications with encrypted chat rooms. I've touched a bit about it on a few other videos in the past, but the reality is Signal themselves has a long and hard history showing that they actually don't have any access to data. There's a long been a fallacy with government trying to send warrants to Signal, and Signal's just sending back a bunch of metadata because they don't have access to it. They don't have access to the messages themselves. They actually do open source parts of the components. Not only that, the head of Signal, Meredith Whitaker, as of the time of this post, she is an absolute powerhouse in fighting for privacy and security rights. She is incredibly well respected in the cybersecurity space. Now, yes, as of this post right now, there was a Cloudflare vulnerability that a security researcher did uncover that showed some things, but it wasn't necessarily a Signal wholly owned issue per se. It is again going back to the argument I said of it was a unknown vulnerability that could then be exploited. That is not an intentional backdoor. Cloudflare acknowledged as much, and it's a little bit of finger pointing back between, who needs to actually fix the issue, things like that. Cloudflare says they fixed the little teleport issue, and then Signal and Discord just have to add the thing, but neither here nor there. It's basically another example of an unknown vulnerability, not an intentional backdoor. Signal has had an extensive amount of audits for over a decade from many different third parties, dating back from, as far as I can see, to 2013. And many of these reports are published out there. You can go verify these reports as well. And on top of that, I know some people are going to be asking questions about what about WhatsApp? Well, from my understanding, I don't think they really get government funding because Meta owns them. Meta acquired them a few years ago. I'm not a fan of WhatsApp. There were too many freaky situations where I was using WhatsApp in the past that after Meta had acquired them, I was noticing apparently would give enough metadata to my Facebook profile to say, hey, even though I don't know you from any other mutual connections there, why don't you go and follow this person? I had no connection to that person whatsoever, except that they were connecting to me through WhatsApp. Maybe they were on vacation and I just happened to connect with them, or I was at a conference and I didn't want to connect them on Facebook because Facebook was more of the personal thing. And it's just a really weird situation, which really was when I started going down the rabbit hole of, I don't really trust Meta with my data, and needless to say, a couple years after I started having that revelation, I deleted my Facebook account, and I haven't really used WhatsApp ever since, except for a few relatives. But it's not really relevant too much to this discussion. I just thought I'd add it in because I know some people are going to ask about that. Now, of course, another piece of software that often is connected with being private is the Onion router, Tor browser, the whole Tor protocol, everything like that. And a lot of people love to say that the government has intentionally backdoored that because the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory was behind it. The reality of it is that the research has been around since the 1990s, and I think it was around, 2004, the Naval Research Laboratory released the code for Tor under a free license. And this is also around the time when the Electronic Frontier Foundation also began funding to continue their development. The Electronic Frontier Foundation is one of the most powerful advocacy groups for digital rights, period. Which, by the way, I'm going to take a moment right now, even though I'm not sponsored by them, please go check out the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and go and donate to them. I have been a member of theirs for many years. They defend all of our cyber rights out there. They do an immense amount of advocacy, and I cannot love them enough. They will always get my hard-earned dollars every time they have a donation drive or anytime I can justify sparing a few extra bucks to give to a good cause. So please go check out the EFF. Again, not sponsored, but please go and sponsor them. Now, a lot of people would ask the common rational question of why would the government put this kind of software into open source and release it to the public? Well, let's think about this for a second. This software is known for encrypting and anonymizing users and everything like that. So imagine you are in US intelligence and you're using a protocol that sticks out like a sore thumb whenever you're on anyone's network. That would be very sus to anyone that is working in intelligence. Whereas if they release it as a public protocol and then it is openly used by the public, as it is by journalists, advocacy groups, and protests, all sorts of different people are using it. And yes, I know you're going to say, there are bad things on there too. Well, yeah, you kind of can find bad things everywhere. I mean, the honest truth is you're going to find more really weird and disgusting things on the ClearNet than you will find on Darknet. I have some funny stories about Darknet being on the Darknet forums and stuff like that. Yeah, there are some bad actors out there, but the overall reality is, just like the rest of the world, most people are good people. You're going to find a few bad actors here and there. And as for those of you saying, well, they're selling drugs and stuff on there. Well, they're probably doing it on your street corner too, bud. Needless to say, but over the years, Tor has been well used by a lot in the public, and that has also given the United States government, with their intelligence assets, plausible deniability to use such systems, because then it's just lumped in with the, overall mass communication and hard to decipher what from what. That is just kind of, the common understanding of how you want to basically hide in plain sight. Nothing new. A lot of intelligence people will tell you, hiding in plain sight's probably one of the best things you can do. And yes, over the years, Tor has had various vulnerabilities. And just to be clear, most of those vulnerabilities have to do with what? People not updating their software. If this is your lesson right now, that's pretty much the main lesson most of cybersecurity has, is update your systems. Like, that's why we get cranky with the people that are still running Windows 7 and all that. I like Windows 7 better. Well, guess what? I like security more. If you really want an operating system that isn't gonna, bind you into using it in a way you don't like and spy on you more, there's this thing called Linux. I digress. But anyway, over the years, Tor has proven pretty reliable for a lot of different things. Of course, there are different vulnerabilities there, but having a unknown vulnerability is not the same thing as an intentional backdoor. And as we've seen, intentional backdoors are more commonly going to be found in, say, your telecommunications systems, like law enforcement did, which Salt Typhoon took advantage of. And yeah, that was great. Go see the video about that I just recently posted, talking about, Donald Trump taking apart the Cyber Safety Review Board that was looking into that. That's a shame in of theirself. The other argument I often see trying to prove that government's trying to backdoor everything is, well, you know, the NSA is trying to break our encryption by backdooring it. When in reality, the truth is that the NSA is basically just doing the same thing as a bunch of colleges and researchers around the world of trying to break cryptography as we have done historically. I mean, y'all would not believe how many encryption protocols we've actually thrown in the trash bin of history. Do y'all know about DES or any other kind of encryption protocol? By the way, if you're still using DES for a lot of your things, please seek some help. You shouldn't be doing that. It's not secure. But that's the natural evolution of technology. And just because the NSA is thinking about using quantum computers to break cryptography at certain levels doesn't mean we're having new standards also be developed that are, post-quantum encryption, all these different things. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, don't work yourself in a tizzy to put tinfoil on your head when you don't really understand the depth of this field. I understand cybersecurity and IT can be like weird magic voodoo doll, magic blue smoke thing, kind of, feeling like magic. But the reality is there's a lot of logic behind this. There's just a lot of conceptual knowledge you need to have beforehand to fully understand where it goes. You can take a lot of the random information that we have in cybersecurity and then start putting together some weird conspiracy theory that in your mind as a non-technical person makes complete sense, and I understand where you're at. Hell, once upon a time, back when I was younger, I might have gotten down that route too. But the reality is that's not how it works. Anyone can take information they don't quite understand and put it in wrong ways. How many people did we see use, the hydroxychloroquine or whatever of that? Or, then start using fish tank stuff or, basically literally putting poison in their body to stop COVID because that's what they believed was better than the actual. This is what happens to a lot of people, not just in cybersecurity, but all over. When they start getting into fields they don't quite understand without understanding the base knowledge that you need to get to these points. So, with that being said, I wouldn't worry about just because a government is funding a technology that they may per se be backdooring it. The reality is they're probably using the same technology too and want to make sure that it is properly secured and supported so that they can continue using it for their own operations. I think that's what a lot of people forget, is that the government is using the same exact software we are. Yes, while we can complain about the whole Salt Typhoon backdooring network communications, that was more of a result of people that didn't understand better. The FBI for many years has had this perspective of if you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to fear, and that has been a fallacious issue of itself. And that is starting to be turned around because even the FBI accepted, hey, our regular communications are being, spied on by other actors, so we're going to recommend that you use encrypted apps like Signal and WhatsApp and all that, but I digress. The reality is, don't worry too much about it. Do your research. Do a little bit deeper digging than I would be worried about, saying oh, government funds it, must be bad. Two things can be true. Government can fund a thing and it also being good. And if there is an intentional exploit, we will hear about it. Like when we found about the NSA withholding tools that actually ended up to the Eternal Blue exploit that allowed for a lot of ransomware to go around the world. Remember when FedEx and all them were shutting down and everything? Yeah. So that is an example of not intentionally placing a backdoor, but withholding information to properly secure it from what were unknown vulnerabilities. That's, the different thing there. But with that being said, we can go down this rabbit hole so deep. And the problem is, I don't even think it's worth going down too deep into that rabbit hole of conspiracy, because the reality is just a little bit of factual information will keep you away from the tinfoil stack being put on your head. With that being said, thank you all. Thank you for listening to my little rant here. Happy hacking, y'all. Stay safe.